Welcome to this quick start session of the Profiler Training Certification course. In this session, we're going to talk about some of the pitfalls, some of the things to watch out for as you're learning to be a profiler.
Yeah, we call it profiling ethics because it really is. I mean, there's nothing moral about this. There's going to be no morality. There are no laws or rules around this. But there are some best practices. Yeah. There is some ethics around some of the better ways and the not so better ways to use this power. Now, the reason why we believe ethics is an important consideration is that this becomes a very powerful tool in your tool belt, all right? It can be used for good or for evil. And just like a hammer can be used to build a new house, it can also be used to bludgeon somebody to death. So we have some ethical best practices that we want to talk about before we get into the component of really picking up this powerful tool so that it will be used for good and not for evil.
I'll tell you what, when you're learning profiling, one of the challenges is to stop yourself from weaponizing it, from using it as a way to categorize people in a way that's suppressing their true nature. Well, you're just a perceiver. That's why you're acting this way. Blah 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 blah. Or well, of course you're going to be fussy about this. You're a judger. You know, this kind of language that can emerge, and I've seen myself do it. We've probably all done it as we've learned profiling. But this is one of the pitfalls to stay away from. One of the things we don't want to do is use this to put people in boxes, to label them in a negative way. It's really not the purpose of why we're teaching profiling and why we use profiling.
And like Joel said, it's easier to do in early days. I know that we talk about cognitive functions a lot between the two of us. And as a married couple, we really have to make sure that we don't bring it into our fights, into our arguments. Because we'll be like, well, you're just using blah, 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 when you should be using, that. Well, anytime you're projecting onto somebody else what they should and should not be utilizing in their own minds, in their own brain wiring, then you've turned it into a weapon. So we want to talk about a couple different components. The first one is beware of the Pygmalion project. Now, Pygmalion in Greek mythology was a sculptor who sculpted his perfect woman out of marble, and she came alive. One of the things that David Kiersey brought to the table, he wrote a book called Please Understand Me, which is quite possibly the most accessible and well-publicized book on Myers-Briggs. He talks about the Pygmalion Project in the book, Please Understand Me. Now, the Pygmalion Project is when two people fall madly in love with each other, or even just are really good friends, or just have a great bond with each other, or even if they're parent and child, and they have the bond of parent and child, or whatever the relationship is. The things that you love about them initially are generally the things that are different than you, because in nature, polarity creates attraction. So we become very attracted to people who are very different from us. However, over time, as the honeymoon period is ending, or maybe, the whole concept of familiarity breeds contempt, you get to a point where those things that were so charming before are now nothing but annoying and obnoxious. And so what we start to do is we start to chisel away at the other person, hoping that they'll become more like us. All right. We want them to be variations of us because we can handle ourselves and we think that we're awesome. Now, the problem with the Pygmalion Project is that we forget that the same things that made us fall madly in love with that person initially, or just really have a strong fondness, is now what we're trying to change about them. And when you understand personality psychology, it becomes very difficult not to utilize that as a weapon to change the other person, because now you're more manipulative. Now you're more persuasive. Now you know exactly what they need to change, right? Like you're a surgeon now, and you can go in and change those components. So ethically, morally, you can do whatever you want to, but ethically, that is not an appropriate way to use profiling. If you're using the system to carve away at other people to try to change them away from who they are, because now you have a deeper insight into what's going on, that's actually a way to not use it constructively, but rather use the hammer to bludgeon another person.
Yeah. Also, so we've talked about using it as a weapon to classify people in a negative way. Also in the hiring process, or when you're selecting people maybe for a job or career, or if you're a business owner or a team leader and you're looking to place people, I've seen typology used in, well, you're this type, ... So that must mean that you're excellent at this skill set. And they've actually, I've seen businesses do this after they get a little bit of a working knowledge of typology, take someone who their type generally is good at this skill set. let's say it's a type that's very good at being a CEO. So now the company puts them in a leadership role, maybe a management position, but they have no skill built around being a manager. It's just that their type tends to lend itself to that type of career. And so people will place people not based on their aptitude or their skill development, but based on type. And this can be a pitfall as well. This can be something that ethically you don't want to do, or remove somebody's option from a position. Yeah. Well, you're a fun-loving ENFP, for example, so that means you can't take responsibility or be trusted with our financial systems here at this company or in this role because you're too free-spirited. Well, that doesn't necessarily always bear out. There are all types. It's not about them fitting into a box based on their personality. It's about their aptitudes and skills they bring and their desires and interests for those skills.
Yeah. Isabel and Catherine originally used it to help place women in occupations that they didn't have skill built, and they had to do it based on talent. However, that was a necessity for the time, and it was not ideal by any stretch of the imagination. We don't have to do that at this time period. We can actually match people to the job based on the skills that they have worked hard to come with. And so if you use typology only to try to figure out what people's talents are, then as Joel mentioned, if they haven't built skill, you will actually be quite disappointed in their inability to perform the job. And as Joel mentioned, you're a fun-loving ENFP, so you shouldn't be cooking the books. You shouldn't be cooking the books. You shouldn't be cooking the books.
No matter what type you are.
Don't cook the books. You shouldn't be doing book work. And there is some truth to that. Now, the ENFP may come with the skill of being able to do, say, accounting, but they might not actually enjoy their job very much. Yeah. So it's actually a combination of the skill that they bring and also their talent and the things that they're going to want to be focused on. It's a combination of all of these things. So again, morally, you can do whatever you want to. I don't know if it's truly legal to throw somebody out to the curb because of their personality type. So check the legalities in your particular area. Yeah. However, that said, it can be a powerful tool for predicting how somebody will perform in the long run. And so it's a piece of the puzzle, but don't use it as the complete picture. And when it comes to how you're going to be doing this particular or learning this particular skill, we're going to recommend something in early days that we suggest that you shed in later days, okay? And we're going to go back to Stephen Covey again because he's brilliant, and we're going to refer to his what's called the dependence model. And the dependence model is based on our relationship with people generally, but I think that it's a really powerful model for understanding skill built and relationships with ideas and concepts that we like. In early days, when we start picking up a skill, we become dependent upon that skill. And what that means is that we over-rely on it. We think it's really important. We throw all of our eggs in that basket, and that's all we want to do. And we're massively dependent upon that particular way of thinking. And then over time, maybe sometimes we're using it in inappropriate situations, and it kind of bites us in the ass, and we're like, oh, well, maybe this isn't that great of a skill. And so we become independent from it. And so now suddenly we're not using it at all, and we don't really think it's that great. And we're like, yeah, I used to like that, but I don't anymore. And then you get to a point where you feel some independence from the skill, and then you graduate onto you can graduate onto what's called interdependence. And interdependence is that time period where you go, I think I realize that it's not an appropriate tool for all contexts, but for the context that it's a good tool for, man, it's a great tool. So I think I'm not going to use it all the time, but I'm going to use it when it's a good time to use it. And that's when you create an interdependent relationship with a skill. So in early days, we actually recommend that you become dependent on the skill. We recommend that you become obsessed with it. And when I say obsessed, I mean like you look around the room for inanimate objects and try to do their personality type. Like, what's the personality type of the microphone? What's the personality type of, Joel's bracelet? Like,
or your pets.
Of your pets, right? Yeah, exactly. Like of people that you never met, like type everything, okay? And by doing that, you'll get in the mind frame of some of the patterns will emerge, sort of like, well, I think this microphone's a something, something, something. Well, why is that? And then you give all your reasons for the pattern recognition of the microphone being a certain type. So it's actually good to become dependent upon that. You'll go through a time period, though, where it will still be a powerful tool, but you won't rely on it as much. And then when you go through the independent phase, then you can graduate to interdependence, which is the healthiest relationship you can have with the model. So we encourage you to go through that dependence model as fast as you can. And the best way to do that is to become obsessed in early days. So those are some of the considerations that we want you to really sort of incorporate into your relationship with profiling so that you use it in the most ethical way possible.
Yeah. And the whole mindset is that we want you to use this in a positive way, not to harm, not to categorize in a negative fashion, not to bludgeon people or hurt them, but to think about how can I help humans, other people on this planet by understanding them better, showing up with a frame of understanding, a frame of compassion, and a frame of helping people grow and get to the next level. And that's really what we hope for you.